Every new housekeeper who stepped through the towering iron gates of the Larkins estate did so with a blend of excitement and fear. The mansion itself was a breathtaking display of wealth: marble floors, gilded staircases, crystal chandeliers in every hallway. It looked like something out of a fairy tale, and for many, the pay promised by Mr. Larkins was more than generous. But beneath all the grandeur, something sinister seemed to hang in the air. Whispers had begun to circulate through the housekeeping agencies. The Larkins twins are nightmares, some would say. Others told stories of maids who left after a single day, their hair disheveled, their nerves shattered. One woman had reportedly run out barefoot at dawn, her suitcase trailing behind her, screaming that she'd rather be homeless than spend another minute in that place. Everyone thought she was exaggerating, until more followed in her footsteps. The twins, Lily and Lila, were only 8 years old. But there was something almost unnerving about the way they moved, the way they watched people. They were identical in every way: golden curls, bright blue eyes, and a look of quiet calculation that didn't belong on a child's face. The staff had nicknamed them the Porcelain Devils. Beautiful, charming to strangers, but wicked beneath the surface. Within their first week, most housekeepers found themselves victims of the twins' cruel tricks. One woman found her cleaning supplies filled with honey and glue. Another woke up to find her bed frame had been unscrewed during the night. She collapsed to the floor when she sat down. More than one maid suffered scratches, stolen belongings, and even broken bones from traps the girls had set around the house. It wasn't just the mischief, it was the way the girls looked at them after. Cold, emotionless stares as if they were watching a game unfold. They never apologized. They never explained. And worse, Mr. Larkins never seemed to care. He was a powerful man, always traveling, always too busy to deal with the chaos inside his own home. On the rare occasions he was there, he would scowl at the staff and remind them, "You're here to do a job. Do it." If they brought up the girls, he waved them off or told them to stop being dramatic. No one dared question him twice. And so, the cycle continued. A new housekeeper would arrive every few days, each one thinking maybe the others had been weak, maybe they could handle it. But by the end of the week, sometimes sooner, they would leave defeated, frightened, and often humiliated. The agencies had begun to give warnings when assigning jobs. "Larkins estate," they'd say, shaking their heads. "Are you sure? No one lasts more than a week." The mansion's halls echoed not with joy or warmth, but with silence, the kind that pressed against your chest and made you feel like you didn't belong. The walls were spotless, but the energy inside was far from clean. One thing was certain: the Larkins twins didn't want a housekeeper. They wanted a challenge. And they always won. Until one day, when a woman unlike any before stepped through those gates, umbrella in hand, eyes calm, heart unshaken by rumors. Her name was Elena, and she didn't flinch when she saw the size of the house. Nor did she hesitate when the butler warned her, "They'll break you, like they did the rest." She simply smiled and replied, "Let them try." The study was dimly lit, the thick velvet curtains drawn tightly against the morning sun. A low fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickers of orange across the walls lined with leather-bound books and old oil paintings. Behind the vast mahogany desk sat Mr. Larkins, his fingers steepled under his chin, eyes locked on the letter in front of him. His jaw tightened as he read. The familiar words for the 6th time that month: a resignation. "I regret to inform you that I can no longer continue in my role due to unforeseen circumstances," it read, like all the others. But the final line was the most telling: "Your daughters are beyond my ability." He didn't sigh. He didn't groan. He simply folded the letter with cold precision and placed it on the growing pile beside him. It had become routine, this procession of failures. Housekeeper after housekeeper, nanny after nanny. Some left politely. Others left with bruises, both on their skin and on their pride. None stayed. A knock interrupted the silence. The butler, Gregory, stepped inside carrying a silver tray with Mr. Larkins' morning espresso. He hesitated before speaking. "She left in the middle of the night, sir. Didn't wait for her pay. Said she didn't want anything from this house." Gregory kept his eyes fixed on the tray, as if afraid to meet his employer's gaze. Mr. Larkins grunted, barely reacting. "The 4th one this month," he muttered. "Pathetic." She locked herself in the pantry after the girls smeared the walls with chocolate syrup and glitter, Gregory added quietly. They also removed the wheels from her cleaning cart. Mr. Larkins rose from his chair slowly. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, always impeccably dressed even within the confines of his home. His silver hair was neatly combed back, and his expression carried the sternness of a man used to getting his way. Yet behind his hard features, there was a flicker of something else, exhaustion. Not physical, but emotional. A kind of deep, soul-worn fatigue that clung to him like a second skin. He crossed to the window, drew back the curtain, and stared out at the sprawling grounds. The morning dew still clung to the grass. In the distance, he could see the twins chasing each other through the garden maze, their laughter shrill and echoing like something out of a dream, or a nightmare. From a distance, they looked like perfect angels. But Mr. Larkins knew better. They were never like this before their mother died, he said quietly, more to himself than Gregory. She knew how to handle them. She softened them. Now, he trailed off, the words hanging in the air like smoke. Gregory cleared his throat gently. Shall I contact the agency again, sir? Mr. Larkins turned back to him, eyes steely. No more amateurs. No more sweet-talking girls with degrees and no spine. I want someone who doesn't care about our money. Someone who isn't here for the salary or the estate. Someone who knows what they're doing. I will reach out to more exclusive circles, Gregory offered. Perhaps a private candidate. Do it, Larkins snapped. Then, after a pause, he added in a quieter voice, and this time, make sure they understand, this is not a job. It's war. As Gregory left the study, Mr. Larkins poured himself a drink, even though it was barely past 9. He sipped slowly, staring into the fire. Somewhere deep down, a part of him still hoped that someone, anyone, could reach his daughters. Not to punish them, not to control them, but to save them. Because if someone didn't come soon, he wasn't sure how much longer the house, or his heart, could survive. The rain fell in sheets, blurring the sharp lines of the Larkins estate's towering gates as a lone figure approached. Her coat was soaked through, yet she moved with steady purpose, unbothered by the storm. Her name was Elena, though no one knew much more than that. She had no agency recommendation, no glowing reference letter, no resume printed on expensive paper. What she had was a simple handwritten note in her coat pocket, an address, and the memory of a conversation from years ago that had led her here. She reached the intercom by the gate and pressed the button. After a few moments, a crackling voice came through. Yes, I'm here for the housekeeping position, Elena said calmly. There was a pause, then the voice responded with surprise, you weren't expected. Do you have an appointment? No, but I heard you were looking for someone who doesn't scare easily. There was silence on the line. Then, without another word, the gates creaked open. Elena walked through, her boots crunching on the gravel as she made her way up the long driveway. The mansion loomed ahead, elegant and intimidating, its stone facade made darker by the storm. When the heavy double doors opened, it was Gregory, the butler, who greeted her. He looked her up and down, drenched, dressed simply, with a calm but unreadable face. You're late, he said flatly. I wasn't invited, she replied with the hint of a smile. He raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Instead, he stepped aside and allowed her in. The warmth of the foyer was instant, the crackle of a nearby fireplace casting a golden glow on the marble floors. Yet the atmosphere felt far from welcoming. It was as if the house itself was sizing her up. Gregory led her through the grand hall in silence until they reached a small sitting room. He gestured for her to wait. She took off her coat, shook off the rain, and sat down on a velvet chair that felt too elegant to touch. She didn't fidget. She didn't look around with curiosity like most new hires did. She just sat still, hands folded, waiting. A few minutes later, Mr. Larkins entered the room, his expression unreadable as always. He glanced at her, then at Gregory. She came uninvited, Gregory said. No resume. No credentials. Mr. Larkins tilted his head slightly, examining the woman before him. She didn't stand. She didn't introduce herself. She simply met his gaze. You think you can handle them? He asked, voice low. I know I can, she replied without hesitation. You do realize that 20 women before you have failed. Some within hours. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to help. Her tone was calm, devoid of ego, but firm. He narrowed his eyes. Why this job? That's personal, she said. But I've worked with children like yours before. I've seen worse. I've lived through worse. The room went quiet for a moment. Larkins studied her face. No fear, no smugness, just quiet certainty. Fine, he said at last. 1 week. If you last that long, we'll talk. I'll last. As Gregory walked her to the guest wing where staff stayed, he gave one final warning. They'll test you. They always do. Don't think for a second that their sweet smiles mean anything. Elena looked at him, her voice soft but firm. Let them test me. I'm not afraid of little girls. And with that, she stepped into the house not just as another housekeeper, but as the only one who hadn't flinched at its reputation, a woman carrying her own quiet storm into a mansion already full of chaos. The door creaked open as Elena stepped into the playroom, a space that looked more like a designer's showroom than a place for children. Velvet drapes, handcrafted wooden toys, and plush furniture filled the large room. Everything was perfectly arranged, perfectly expensive, and yet, there was something oddly lifeless about it. Like it was made to impress guests, not to be lived in. The silence was sharp at first. Then came the soft patter of footsteps behind her. She turned. 2 identical girls stood in the doorway, dressed in matching pale blue dresses with lace collars and shiny shoes. Their golden hair fell in perfect curls, their expressions unreadable. They were beautiful in a way that almost didn't seem real. But their eyes, icy blue and far too knowing for their age, watched Elena. With the calculated curiosity of someone observing a lab rat. You're the new one of them said. Her voice was high and sweet, but her tone was flat. You won't last, the other added, already turning away. Elena offered no reaction. Then I guess I'll just enjoy the time I have. The girls paused. That wasn't the response they expected. The first twin walked closer. Do you know what happened to the last one? She cried, said the second, grinning now. And she ran away before breakfast. Is that so? Elena replied, bending slightly to examine a crayon drawing left on a low table. She didn't flinch when she felt a soft tug at the hem of her sweater. One of them was testing her. Did you draw this? It's good. A little dark. But good. It's a monster, one said. It's you, the other added, waiting for a reaction. Still, Elena gave them nothing. Then I must be very tall. And very purple. The twins exchanged a quick glance, an unspoken communication Elena caught, though they thought she didn't notice. A plan was forming. She stood, meeting their gaze with calm eyes. The next few minutes were chaos. One of the girls ran behind her and poured a bucket of flour down from a high shelf. It hit Elena squarely on the head, dusting her in white powder like a baking disaster. The other had slipped away and returned with one of Mr. Larkins' golf balls, which she rolled beneath Elena's feet in hopes of tripping her. The flour settled in the air like snow. Elena didn't shout. She didn't scold. She looked down at herself, covered in white, and calmly dusted off her arms. Flour's a bit dated. Have you tried honey and feathers? Much stickier. The twins stared. She was supposed to yell. She was supposed to cry. This was usually the part when the adults broke. Elena picked up the golf ball and rolled it back to them. You'll have to be smarter than that. You're not mad? One of them asked, clearly thrown off. I don't waste anger on people who are hurting, Elena said simply, her voice even. You don't scare me. Something shifted then, a subtle crack in their facade. For the first time, Elena saw it, not mischief, not cruelty, but confusion. Maybe even curiosity. The twins backed off, just slightly. We're not hurting, one said defensively. Everyone hurts sometimes, Elena replied. Even if they pretend not to. The room was quiet again. But not the sharp, tense silence from before. This time it was thoughtful. Elena moved to the window and opened it, letting fresh air sweep through the powder-filled room. We'll clean this up together. I'll show you how. The girls didn't respond, but neither did they run. They watched her. And for the first time, neither was smiling, not cruelly, not smugly. They were just watching. And that, Elena thought, was a start. The next morning, the house felt different. Almost imperceptibly so, but Elena noticed. The air no longer carried that tight, buzzing tension she had felt on her first day. The twins were quiet at breakfast, seated like porcelain dolls at their long dining table. Their eyes watched her the way cats observe unfamiliar creatures, ready to pounce but curious enough to wait. Most housekeepers would start by tiptoeing around the girls, trying to stay out of their way. Elena didn't. She entered the room with steady steps, holding a basket of folded laundry and a notebook tucked under one arm. She greeted them calmly, "Good morning, girls," and placed a small flower in a vase at the center of the table without waiting for acknowledgement. They didn't respond, but they didn't launch into chaos either. That was enough. After breakfast, Elena didn't give them the freedom to vanish into the depths of the estate like they usually did. She called to them gently but firmly, "You two. With me." The twins blinked. One of them looked almost amused. "We don't take orders." "Then think of it as a request," Elena replied. "I'm cleaning the art room, and I need help." "You're supposed to do it," one of them said, testing her. "I am. And I've decided you'll help me." The girls exchanged glances. This was new. No one had ever told them to help clean. No one had dared to assign them anything. Out of sheer curiosity, and perhaps the smallest hint of respect, they followed her. In the art room, chaos reigned. Paint-stained tables, glue-encrusted brushes, crumpled drawings on the floor. Elena didn't scold. She handed each girl a cloth and showed them how to dampen it. When one of them tried to fling paint at her, Elena caught the cup midair, steady as stone. "Accidents happen," she said coolly, placing the paint back on the shelf. Instead of pushing back, the twins paused. They started wiping surfaces half-heartedly, but Elena didn't hover. She worked beside them, humming softly, an old tune they didn't recognize, but which oddly comforted them. After a few minutes, one of the twins asked, "Why are you doing this yourself?" "We've always had other people to clean this. I don't believe in letting others do what I can do myself," Elena replied. "It keeps my hands honest." They didn't understand that completely, but they didn't argue either. By mid-afternoon, Elena was in the hallway, dusting the high shelves with a long-handled brush. She didn't notice the girls standing behind her, watching her work. Usually, this was the moment they struck. They'd trip a worker, tie their shoelaces together, steal their phone or shout nonsense to get them fired. Instead, Lila asked, "Why aren't you scared of us?" Elena turned, calmly met their eyes. "Because I see two little girls who want to be seen. Not feared." Lily frowned. "We don't want to be seen." "Yes, you do," Elena said softly. "But only by someone who won't run away." Their silence said everything. She'd cracked something. Not broken, but shifted. Later that evening, when she brought them warm towels after their bath, they didn't slam the door in her face. They took the towels and muttered a quiet, "Thanks," almost uncertainly. That night, Elena sat in her modest room in the staff wing, sipping tea. For the first time in years, the mansion's corridors didn't echo with screams or crashes. Instead, they were filled with a strange, unfamiliar quiet. Not the tense quiet of children plotting, but the kind that came when walls, however slowly, began to fall. The days that followed brought a transformation so subtle that even the butler, Gregory, who had served the Larkins family for over 2 decades, could hardly believe what he was witnessing. It began with the small things. No screaming matches. No pranks. No hysterical laughter echoing down the halls in the middle of the night. For the first time in what felt like years, the mansion wasn't under siege by its own children. Elena never raised her voice. She didn't bribe, scold, or plead. Instead, she treated Lily and Lila with a strange combination of gentle authority and quiet respect. She gave them tasks, expected things from them, held them accountable, and they responded not with rebellion, but with curiosity. Perhaps it was because Elena never tried to win them over. She didn't try to be their friend. She didn't pretend to understand them. She simply showed up, every day, without fail. One afternoon, as golden sunlight poured through the tall windows of the drawing room, Mr. Larkins passed by and stopped short. Inside, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. His daughters sitting cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Not tearing it apart, not throwing pieces across the room, but quietly working together. Elena sat beside them, sipping tea and offering the occasional hint without solving the puzzle for them. The girls didn't even notice their father watching. They were too focused, too content in the moment to fall into their usual pattern of chaos. Later that night, Mr. Larkins summoned Gregory. "What changed?" he asked, pacing the floor of his study. Gregory, who had been equally astonished by the shift, hesitated before answering. "She treats them like people, not problems." Mr. Larkins narrowed his eyes. "I've tried that. With respect, Sir, Gregory replied gently, you've tried managing them. She's raising them. The following week, the transformation continued. Elena began involving the twins in household routines. They helped her bake bread one morning, getting flour in their hair and giggling, not in that cruel, mocking way they once did, but genuinely. They burned the first batch. Elena made them clean the oven. They didn't protest. One morning, Lila appeared in the kitchen before breakfast, still in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She muttered, "Can I help you set the table?" Elena handed her a stack of napkins and simply said, "Thank you." The house staff watched all of this with a mixture of awe and disbelief. These were the same girls who had once trapped the gardener in the greenhouse for 6 hours. Who replaced the cook's salt with powdered sugar. Now they were offering to fold laundry, reading quietly in the afternoons, and even apologizing, awkwardly, stiffly, but sincerely, when they knocked over a vase. There were still moments, of course. Old habits don't vanish overnight. Once, Lily snapped at Elena when she couldn't find her favorite sweater. Another day, Lila threw a tantrum over a cancelled picnic due to rain. But instead of screaming matches or slamming doors, Elena sat with them, talked them through it, and helped them express what they were really feeling. And the girls, against all odds, listened. One evening, Mr. Larkin stood at the top of the grand staircase, watching his daughters play a card game with Elena by the fireplace. The room glowed with soft lamplight. The laughter he heard wasn't manic or forced. It was light, real. For the first time in years, he felt something loosen in his chest. The bitterness, the guilt, the helplessness. He wasn't sure what Elena had done or how she had done it. But somehow, this quiet woman had walked into his home and, without shouting or pleading, began to repair the wreckage left behind by loss and neglect. And for the first time in a long, long while, the house felt like a home. It was well past midnight when the mansion finally settled into silence. The kind of deep, restful quiet that only came when the chaos of the day had truly ended. The fire in the library had dwindled to glowing embers, and most of the staff had retired to their quarters. Elena, however, remained awake. She stood in the hallway just outside the girls' room, listening to the soft rise and fall of their breathing. Earlier that evening, Lily had curled up beside her on the couch during story time, something no one in the house could have imagined just 2 weeks ago. Lila had even offered Elena her favorite stuffed rabbit to hold while she read aloud. Elena had accepted it without comment but with a small, warm smile. She lingered a moment longer, then turned and made her way down the quiet corridor toward the servant wing. Her door creaked softly as she entered, and she dropped her shawl over the chair by the window before sinking into the armchair beside it. A cup of half-finished tea sat cold on the side table, untouched since hours ago. She reached for her phone, its screen glowing faintly in the dark. One missed call. A familiar number. She hesitated, then pressed it. The call connected almost immediately. "Elena," came the voice on the other end. It was a woman, older, gentle. "They're asleep," Elena said, her voice low. "Quiet tonight." There was a pause. "Are you all right?" Elena exhaled slowly, leaning her head back against the chair. "They remind me of them," she said, her tone soft, fragile in a way she never allowed around the children. "So much." The woman on the other end of the line didn't speak right away. She knew the story, everyone close to Elena did. How a fire had taken everything from her in the space of one horrible night. How she had once been a mother. How she had once had twin girls of her own. Did they know? The woman asked quietly. Elena shook her head, though no one could see her. "No, they don't need to. They just need someone to stay." She rubbed her thumb over the edge of the armrest, staring into the darkness. "They're angry. But underneath it, they're scared. They don't trust love anymore. Not really. I know that feeling. You don't have to carry it all on your own," the woman said gently. "You don't have to fix everyone." "I'm not trying to fix them," Elena murmured. I want them to know they're not broken." There was silence again on the other end. "Then, I saw a light in you back then. Even after everything. It's still there." Elena's eyes welled, but no tears fell. She didn't cry easily, not anymore. "It's easier with them than it is with me," she whispered. "I don't know if I'm healing them, or if they're healing me." "You're doing both," the woman said. "And you're doing it well." After they hung up, Elena sat in the quiet a while longer, the phone resting on her lap. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, and somewhere in the distance an owl called. She thought of her own daughters, their laughter, their little arguments over crayons and dresses. The soft way they used to hold her hand when they were afraid of the dark. She hadn't spoken of them in years. Not like this. Not aloud. But somehow, being here, among Lily and Lila, with their messy hearts and guarded eyes, had brought everything rushing back. And with it, a purpose she hadn't realized she'd lost. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was beginning to live again. The days flowed into weeks, and before anyone quite realized it, Elena had passed the 1-month mark at the Larkins estate, a record no other housekeeper had even come close to achieving. But by now, no one was keeping score. Something far more meaningful had taken root. The transformation in the mansion was undeniable. The once cold and silent hallways now held the quiet hum of life. There was laughter, soft and genuine, not sharp and mocking. The twins were no longer shadows haunting the corridors, but girls. With spark and sweetness who had begun to rediscover the joy of childhood. Mr. Larkins, for his part, remained distant at first. He observed from afar, watching the change unfold with disbelief that slowly gave way to cautious hope. He didn't interfere, didn't ask questions, but each evening, he lingered a little longer near the drawing room door when he heard the sound of his daughters' voices. It had been years since they'd laughed like that. One Saturday afternoon, a rare thing happened. Mr. Larkins canceled his business meetings and stayed home. He watched from his study window as Elena and the girls played catch on the lawn. Lila tripped and fell, and Elena rushed to her side, gently brushing grass from her scraped knee. Instead of screaming or pushing Elena away like she might have weeks ago, Lila wrapped her arms around her and whispered something into her ear. Elena laughed and ruffled her hair. Lily brought a bandage, and the game resumed. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the estate in soft gold, Mr. Larkins made an unusual decision. He had dinner prepared not in the formal dining hall but in the smaller family breakfast room, a space that hadn't been used in years. He ordered 4 place settings. Elena was surprised when Gregory came to her room. Mr. Larkins has requested your presence for dinner, he said with a small, respectful nod. With the family. She hesitated for a moment, then followed him. The room was modest by Larkins' standards, cozy and warmly lit. The twins were already seated, both unusually well behaved and beaming with excitement. Papa said you're eating with us, Lily whispered as Elena took her seat. He never does this. Mr. Larkins entered moments later, not in a suit, but a casual button-down shirt and slacks. It was the first time Elena had seen him look less like a fortress and more like a father. He sat quietly, watching them for a moment before clearing his throat. I wanted to thank you, he said, addressing Elena directly. Not just for staying, but for what you've done for them. For this family. Elena nodded, humbled but calm. They just needed someone to see them. Mr. Larkins was silent for a long moment, then said, I've been absent. I didn't know how to be what they needed after their mother died. I still don't. But I'm trying. They see that, Elena said gently. They don't need perfect. They just need present. After dinner, as the girls curled up on the couch with their favorite storybook, Mr. Larkins stood beside Elena near the fireplace. I'd like to offer you something more permanent, he said. Not just a job. A place here. If you want it. Elena looked over at the girls, their heads resting against each other, giggling softly. I'm not just here for work, she said, her voice soft but certain. I'm here for them. That night, Lily and Lila refused to go to bed without Mama Elena tucking them in. It was the first time they'd called her that. And though the name caught her off guard, made her chest ache in ways she hadn't expected, she didn't correct them. Because in that moment, under the dim glow of their nightlight, she knew it was true. She hadn't just saved them. They had saved her too.